Life of David Livingston, Part 45. African Trees and Vegetation. There are so many anomalies in the continent of contrast that it seems quite of course to observe that nowhere else can it be found at such a vast extent of sandy, barren wastes and such immense expanses of forest, whose trees and vines and jungle verily shut out the rays of the sun and leave the earth in eternal shade and gloom. Much the larger share of North America is embraced within the limits of the great desert of Sahara, though though in some respects not correctly represent the reading of the public, not only covers a vast expanse of the continent, but extends its bleak and dreary nature far eastward of Africa, not ending until it has passed through Arabia, Persia, Central Asia, and penetrated the confines of the Chinese Empire. So in South Africa, we find the Kalahari Desert, often mentioned in this work, which, though singularly covered with herbage and abounding in wild beasts, is much of the same almost entirely untraversable by man on account of the want of water. It is coursed by beds of many rivers which ages ago were doubtless perennial streams of flowing water, now as dry as and uninviting as the sands of the Sahara. There are also extensive treeless plains in America called prairies, whose soil is rich, supporting great quantities of luxuriant grasses and all infinite varieties of shrubs and flowers. Over these, as we have seen, roam countless numbers of wild animals. Over a large portion of the watershed of the South Africa are immense flats covered with water during the long season of rains, but in the dry season presenting to the eyes a boundless expanse of infinitely variegated flowers. Bounding these deserts, treeless plains and flats are forests of almost inconceivable extent, covered with thick jungle and the greatest variety of trees. The magnificent trees which Dr. Livingston found along the banks of the Zauga River have already been spoken of. The baobab is equally of size to the famous giant trees of California, the immense and hollow trunk of one of which has been exhibited as a curiosity in most portions of the United States. In some parts of the Bechuana country, the remains of ancient forests and of wild olives and of the camel thorn are still to be met with. It is probable, says Dr. Livingston, that this is the tree of which the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle were constructed, as it is reported to be found where the Israelites were at the time of these were made. It is an imperishable wood, while that usually pointed out as the shittim soon decays and wants beauty. The baobab, already mentioned, has a vitality almost imperishable. No external injury, says Livingston, not even a fire, can destroy this tree from without, nor can any injury be done from within, as it is quite common to find it hollow, and I have seen one on which 20 or 30 men could lie down and sleep inside of it as a hut. Nor does cutting down exterminate it, for I saw instances in Angola in which it continued to grow in length after it was lying on the ground. In fact, the baobab, or moaba, as it is often called, has the qualities of both exogenous and androgynous trees, and is rather a gigantic bulb rather than either. It is often seen with its branches extending down to the ground and taking root, after the manner of the banyan. The wood of this giant of the forest is so spongy and soft that an axe can be struck in it so far with a good blow that there is great difficulty in pulling it out again. The mopane tree is remarkable for the little shade it affords and its astonishing capacity for being struck by lightning. The natives say lightning hates it. The wood is hard, of a light red color, and called often ironwood by the Portuguese. On the other hand, there is a fine tree called the marala, which has never been known to be struck by lightning. Branches of it may be seen on the huts of the natives and the houses of the Portuguese in East Africa as a protection against lightning. A tree which the natives call indunu exists in some portions of equatorial Africa, which is taller and more graceful than the baobab. But not of such immense trunk. It is from 8 to 12 feet in diameter near the base. The ebony trees is found in the highlands. It is met with all along the ridges of the hills of equatorial Africa. It is described as one of the finest and most graceful trees of the African forests. Its leaves are long, sharp-pointed, dark green, hanging clusters, producing a graceful shade. Its bark is smooth and a dark green color. The trunk rises straight and often to the height of 60 feet without a branch, and then large, heavy branches are sent out. Some of these valuable trees have a diameter of 5 feet at the base. They are all hollow. When mature, even the branches next to the bark is a white sapwood, which is not valuable. This is an average tree. It is 3 or 4 inches thick. Next to this lies the ebony of commerce. The ebony tree is found intermixed with others in the forest, but generally it groups in 3 and 4 together, none of others within the little distance. In the same regions of equatorial Africa grows the limba plant, whose leaves are used for smoking by the natives, very much as the use of tobacco leaves is in some countries. Under its influence, the natives frequently become permanently insane. Here also, the India rubber vine grows in great luxuriance. Immense quantities of land round about Lake Anavengu, especially, are literally covered with this valuable vine. The cotton plant is indigenous in most portions of Central and South Africa, but the natives here as yet paid little attention to its cultivation. The cannibal tribes of Central Africa make mats and many of their garments of a grass cloth, which has been described by Dr. Livingston and Mr. Stanley in letters here therefore quoted. And the thread used in this material is obtained from a species of palm, a great number of the many different varieties of which abound in Africa. As for grasses, the great explorer of whom this volume principally treats often speaks of riding through immense extents of it, taller than a man on horseback. The vast quantities of grass and the great number of palms in Africa suggest the belief that the manufacture of grass paper may someday become an important element of African commerce. The date tree and many other fruit bearers are plentiful if Christian civilization held her benign sway over all portions of Africa. Much of the great forest area would be cultivated, and the fertile prairies would yield many of the fruits and grains by which the world is supplied with food. The natural agricultural advantages of the continent are undoubtedly very great. It is well known that the valley of the Nile was for ages the granary of the world. Much of it is no less fertile than when its products fed mankind. The whole of Central Africa, from the confines of the desert of Sahara to beyond the sources of the Nile, the Zambezi and the Congo, is mostly suitable to agriculture. A vast region of this country south of the Great Desert and nearly across the continent was formerly the abode of large numbers of people, the remains of whose cities and towns attest to their civilization and successful agriculture. Here was the battleground in Africa between Mohammedanism and paganism, and it is not improbable that the hosts of the prophet were stayed in their victorious career and driven back upon regions previously overrun by the fierce cannibal tribes of equatorial Africa, who, from the time of Herodotus, have afforded some of the best specimens of physical man. Still further south, natural agricultural advantages are notably good, except in the desert of Kalahari, redeemable by means of artesian wells, and the climate is extremely salubrious and healthy.